The organiser of DEFCON 1 in Western Sydney told the Inquest that it was a freak situation. 2 people had lost their lives at his event. Addressing the court, Simon Coffey said that the whole company was shocked worldwide. It has marked me. Joseph Pham and Diana Nguyen died after taking MDMA at the event near Penrith in 2018. The court heard 2 other people had died at that festival in previous years and they had lost the venue as a result. Future events cancelled or on hold. Mr Coffey said he had no input into the number or level of experience of doctors at the event because he left that to subcontractor Event Medical Services. They had rostered on just 2 doctors despite 30,000 people converging on the venue. He said certainly 1 per 1,000, if not more, was what he was looking at, but was hesitant to commit to numbers. He also made some observations about the police presence after attending the same event in Holland, which attracted 150,000. He said there were no fatalities and there was no policing at that event. He said that it must be very intimidating for young people after seeing the high police presence at festivals in New South Wales to then consider approaching those officers for help. He also spoke out in support of pill testing. The inquest is looking into the deaths of 6 young adults at these festivals. It continues.
Yeah, I probably could have taken the whole 9 News part out of it. I clearly just ripped that off the internet. But credit where credit's due. They did do the story, so yeah, whatever. Please don't copyright strike me. So that really, like, one thing I really took from that story, Dave, from what you were talking about earlier with your time in Holland, was the big police presence. Now, you said there was still a huge police presence in the Netherlands for DEFCON, but you just didn't see them.
Yeah, it was super undercover, very covert, and it was very discreet. They didn't make a thing of it because they didn't want to alert the people that they needed to keep an eye on.
Well, I guess they didn't want to freak people out into doing something that they didn't have to do, like dump all their drugs or anything like that.
Completely different way of doing things. Now, we had a few discussions about this when we were overseas going, oh, you know, why is it like this in Europe and why is it like it back in home? And trying to blame entities for a lot of things. But at the end of the day, I think it's a lot of things, you know. This is a bit of a tangent, right? But do you remember the Cronulla riots?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I didn't live in Sydney, but
everyone knows about it, right?
Yeah.
I grew up.
It was covered in Victoria.
Well,
don't you worry.
I grew up in the eastern suburbs, right? So my primary school years, I grew up in Redfern, and my high school years, I grew up in Clovelly. So I know through primary school years, I just remembering what the police were like back in the day. Like if they pulled you over and wanted to teach you a lesson, they'd pull out the phone book and beat you up with one of them. You know, like it was really like hard yakka growing up in Redfern, you know. And in the eastern suburbs, it wasn't that much different if you were causing trouble by the beach, right? And I spent copious amounts of time by the beach, but a lot of stuff got blamed during that Cronulla riots, racism and all this stuff, right? I even got told to go back to my own country, and I was born here.
Yeah.
I don't even speak another language. I'm like, mate, like seriously, you're picking on the wrong person. But the real reason why, and I know this for a fact because my youngest son was a lifeguard at Bondi, the real reason why all of this sparked was not because of race. It was because there were young guys going to the beach and harassing girls, and there was no longer a police presence at the beach because police numbers were getting cut back. So you didn't have a police presence anymore. So what happens is when you have issues at the beach, instead of having police deal with the issues, guess who the next person is with responsibility at the beach? The lifeguards.
The lifeguard.
Guess how old the lifeguards are that are working summers at the beach?
Like 14, 15.
15, 16, 17, 18, young guys with testosterone that are fit, trying to impress chicks at the beach. Like, it's so like yin and yang. And then you got guys coming from out west, because, you know, it's summer, they're going to the beach, they're causing all these issues, and it blew up, and it got escalated by the media. And even though it's a tangent, it's pretty much what's happening now. There is an issue.
Tie it together for me.
It's a greater issue that is happening in the whole of Australia with government policy that's created a culture that is not being managed properly by the police force and is being blown up by the media.
Yep.
So you used to be able to go to the club and buy a drink. You'd have $1 drinks.
Yeah.
The $1 drink special.
Yep.
And you'd buy any drink for $1. And then what happened was so many people were buying alcohol and alcohol this and alcohol that prices started getting so expensive that doing drugs is just financially the best option.
Yep.
So that's how the whole I'm going to do drugs instead of alcohol happened.
Yeah.
Then from that created the culture of doing drugs at parties instead of alcohol. So then we've gone past the point of a financial reason to do drugs to it's just what you do.
Yep.
To the point now where the police don't know how to manage this situation. They just really don't.
Can I stop there for a second? Because there's another underlying issue before we even get to the point of drugs, and that's the culture of excessiveness. When we're brought up when we're young, we're taught alcohol is just alcohol, like it's a way of life, and we go hard. And I think that same mentality is brought to drug culture in Australia.
Yeah, Australians are like that. We've got that in us. We go nuts. We go hard out.
Yep.
I think that's in us, not just with drugs though. That's just in our nature.
Everything.
It's like sport. Like we don't play sport just to have a good time and keep fit. Like we want to win that shit.
But it's like a beaver when a beaver builds a dam. The beaver knows the nature of the water is to flow downstream. So what does the beaver do? It builds a dam to thwart that motion for its own benefit. So what we've done with our culture is we have a culture of going hard, and through financial gain or legislation or no future planning or thinking, the government has
just trying to thwart the flow of the river.
Yeah, doing their thing has created a new systematic approach to partying by Australians where it's not even about drugs aren't even cheap really that anymore either. It's just there's the two options. Well, everyone does drugs. It's a culture. So that's what they're doing. And they're doing it to excess. And because it's not regulated, it's so hit and miss what you take. And it's not regulated in Europe, but it's not overly policed.
Yeah.
So there isn't, like, you got to understand, as a kid, and I call young adults kids still because they're still growing out of that mentality of, I'm not supposed to be doing this. This is cool. So when you over police, you, with one hand, are slapping the issue, but with the other hand, you're raising the issue up. So you're trying to slap down drugs, but you're also raising its popularity by making it cool. And I don't want to blame the government. I don't want to blame parents. I don't want to blame ravers. I really don't want to blame anyone. It's a much bigger issue, and there's a lot of things in place that need to change. And I think a lot of it has started from one situation, and that is with alcohol being removed as the choice, the let's call it a drug of choice, to now where people are actually taking drugs. Yeah. And they're experimenting with so many different types of drugs.
But can I ask? My question is, doesn't it start with the government? Because in order for us to fix these issues that we have, they're supposed to be the leader, and they're the ones that in terms of allowing us harm reduction, in terms of driving education, in terms of changing the culture, they need to be the leaders on this.
I think if we rely on our government to change our culture, we will never move forward.
I didn't say rely. I said they're the lead. They need to be leaders upon it.
I think we as a community need to start really revisiting what we're doing, so that way the government then change their opinion and their mind.
But I think we have done that, haven't we?
I think a lot of us are working hard towards it,
Yeah.
but for some reason, the young kids coming through
Yeah.
are not getting that message.
Yeah, I agree.
There's a massive gap. And
Because I agree, but that's because it's celebrated. The young kids it's what's the word? I can't remember the term for it, but basically kids see it as, oh fuck, it's cool to do it.
I'll give you another example, right? And this is the way the Europeans think. So we were driving to Dubrovnik, and there was Jared and Casey, Raziel, DJ Raziel, and that. We were on the car. Me, Casey, and Scatterlie were drinking. And we're going to Jared, have a drink. And he's like, no, I'm driving. I'm being Deso driver, you know. Everyone knows Deso driver, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, we wonder what the drink driving laws are in Croatia, just out of curiosity. You know what what percentage of alcohol you can drink in Croatia before you're not allowed to drive no more? None. There's no drink driving percentage. You can drink and drive. The only time you're tested is if you have an accident. So the mentality in Croatia is drink, just don't get into an accident.
Or don't be,
Yeah.
Where here in Australia, it's like, don't drink, you will get into an accident.
yeah.
It's
'Cause
different.
I think part of that as well is that
You
They don't have accidents.
You can't really bring that up unless you're going to bring statistics about drink driving accidents in Croatia.
no.
But they don't really have them.
they don't. Yeah.
They don't have them. And they don't really have, and it's like that in most of Europe, because the mentality is not, we're telling you what you're going to do. It's the people saying, no, this is your responsibility, mate.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I completely agree.
It's not Gladys.
It's if unfortunately it's you have a responsibility to yourself. If you take drugs, then you accept the consequences.
I think a lot of the problem, and I'm just maybe pissing in the wind here a little bit, but like Australia is also one of the youngest developed nations on the planet, compared to somewhere where Europe that have had generation upon generation upon generation where they've had access to things like alcohol and substance and so forth. Australia's only settled by Europeans 210 odd years ago.
Yeah, we're
So they've had so many more generations to have a culture where they've matured up and so forth. And Australia, at the end of the day, like I said with the young'uns, we have an immature mentality of going hard and doing that because we just...
I just think I think and everyone, like especially the government, needs to stop, take a massive step back and say, hang on.
Yeah, I
Hang
totally
on.
agree.
Yeah,
This ain't working.
It's not working. And all you're doing is building such a massive negative reputation on our whole country.
And also a huge divide between the law,
Mate,
police,
people-
and
People
and the
everywhere I travelled, people think Australia is so backwards.
Yep.
And you try and tell them so one of the things that with Crocodile Dundee, right, when Crocodile Dundee was released, one of the primary goals for Crocodile Dundee was to show Americans that Australia wasn't actually some backyard bush town, that Australia had a modern city. Hence why Crocodile Dundee led towards the city to show how modern the city was. That was actually part of the task of the story writers. It is literally showing the rest of the world how backward we are mentally, with our mentality. And I'm not talking about pill testing and stuff like that. I think there needs to be a point where we really need to seriously have a long, hard look at just our laws on drugs. Like Portugal had a massive drug problem.
big on heroin.
Huge drug problem. And what they decided to do is, you know
They
what?
legalized everything.
All
didn't they?
drugs are legal now.
Yep.
Personal use.
But
Well,
they treated it. What changed it was they treated it as a
health
health
problem,
issue
yeah.
instead of a criminal issue.
And you know what? Literally fixed nearly all their issues.
But unfortunately, one of the things that I've been sort of grappling with is whether the government has a vested interest in doing what they're doing at the moment.
It doesn't matter. It's resolved a lot of the issues.
I completely agree.
It's
on that,
made
but
drugs suddenly less cool.
It does, but
It's made drugs suddenly not more accessible, but it's made people less paranoid about having drugs on themselves.
Yeah. Yep.
When people are caught with drugs for personal use, the police don't find them. They they make them go to their family doctor
Yeah.
and discuss what they were doing.
But see,
It's about counselling. It's about moving forward in a positive way. It's not like you're waiting to get into an event and you panic and then you dump 3 or 4 caps,
no, of course not.
which is what happened to one of the girls. Like, it's just a different approach and a different mentality. And
You were saying, D?
This is the thing that I'm struggling to come to. This is one of the things that I'm struggling to come to terms with. Everything that you have said, I completely agree with. The thing that I'm struggling to come to terms with is that the evidence is there. All the evidence is there, and yet the government still has a zero tolerance.
That's my problem. They're just not looking to budge.
Yeah, and that's and for me, that's why I said to you before. I'm wondering whether they have a vested interest somehow.
Is in our government has a
Our
vested-
government has a vested interest because logically, anybody knows that if you're provided with evidence, you have to explore that evidence,
Well, yeah.
right? And they're not, and it makes me wonder why. Like there has to be a valid reason why. Going back to your comment about you don't want to blame the government. I can't, like, I do place some not blame, but I do place some onus on them, only because in my own opinion, is that until this generation of politicians moves on and the next generation goes into power, it's never going to change.
Well, that would have to be a catastrophic change of government for that to happen realistically, because as new politicians come in, they are guided by the ones that are already there.
And that's what scares me.
Yeah.
However, there are younger politicians that are currently coming through that still have a voice. And like, I mean, the amount of politicians, say the younger politicians to the older politicians who share the same view, there are a lot more younger ones coming through.
I'll tell you facts, right? And I'll give you rough numbers. How many people went to the last DEF CON?
I think about 20,000.
About 20,000? How many individual ravers within a year turned to some sort of hardstyle event in Australia?
How many individual people?
Yeah.
Maybe well over 100,000.
100. Let's blow it up to 100,000. Let's double that figure, triple that figure, to include at least of each of them having 2 mates that understand the rave scene. Yeah. So let's call it 300,000. Yeah. Let's elevate that to 500,000. We have 500 sympathetic people that understand our plight within the hardest style scene in Australia. A population of 26 million. 500,000 is nothing.
Yep.
Exactly, I agree.
And that's why we have to realise,
and that's why obviously
that's why government is following the policy of the 25,500,000 people.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the country agrees with the government.
Yep.
And that's why I'm saying we need to stop blaming Gladys and we need to stop blaming the government, because a little fact is the New South Wales government isn't who stopped DEF CON this year. I won't go into it.
Why not?
Because
I want to talk about it on my news, so then we can talk about it on Scat Chat next month.
I think we really need to, like, I always taught my kids this: when you point your finger, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. So every time you have blame for someone, there's 3 reasons why you need to blame yourself. And I think our community need to really have a long, hard look at itself and its drug use.
But is it? Yeah, I agree. But it's not just our community. I think it's the Australian music community.
Yeah, but
there's been a war on music, not just drugs.
We're in our community. That's all we can talk about.
No, I understand that, but then
there's no other community in the music in the electronic music industry in Australia that has a tight knit community like our scene. Our scene does. I mean, our people within our scene, from Adelaide, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Sydney, we all know each other. We know each other's DJs. We know each other's music. You can't really say that in other genres. You can't. We're quite literally the most united scene.
Okay.
I think a lot of people find it easy to blame Gladys and to blame the government, though, because we've had 10 years of decision making that has affected us directly and consistently, from lockout laws to the festival knee-jerk reaction laws, and it's been constant for about a decade. And not just Gladys, from Barry O'Farrell right through Mark Baird, and then Gladys. So, like, I can understand why people want to blame the government, because they've meddled and made so many life-changing decisions for so many of us. I'm not saying that they are to blame. I'm not saying you're wrong. That our society needs to change, but like, to what? Like, the expectations also changing at a rapid rate as well.
Mate, in the 90s, we used to have a rave called MDMA.
Oh.
It was one of the biggest raves, and everyone went to it.
In the 90s and early 2000s, raves had the best fucking names like ever. Just in general.
Yeah. Imagine having a party called MDMA now.
But how many people were going to it?
Oh, about 5,000.
So what's the difference between then and now?
Because it wasn't in the media. There was no lawmakers. Police didn't turn up to the event unless they were shutting it down.
I actually really like the idea that you brought up earlier about having large police presence, but not necessarily making them so visible.
Well, are you going to ask?
If you know that,
you have to ask yourself a question, right? The biggest question for me, and this is what I said to the copper when
as long as those coppers then aren't like literally just walking around trying to arrest every single person that they can. That's the mentality.
When I got strip searched, right? I was like, you're strip searching me?
Yeah.
Not like I have an ego or anything, but I'm like, dude, I'm people to not do drugs.
Yeah.
You're strip searching me? What? And then they strip searched me in the room with the door half open. They didn't care. They just wanted me to hurry up, get naked, check, and then make me move on.
Yep.
And I was losing the plot. And I lined 4 coppers up, and I absolutely lambasted them. I gave it to them. They called over a senior copper, and I didn't even switch off. I started losing it at him. And I'm like, I'm innocent. I've just been strip searched naked. You guys, and I was just losing it. And then I turned to the senior officer, and I've gone, I got a question for you. If I take away your dogs, what else do you have to find drugs? I go, you got nothing. You're relying just on a dog because you have no other tools. What are your tools? At the airport, they scan you, they check your bags, they got wands, they do pat downs. That's what they're doing to stop stuff getting into the country. But at the events, they've literally just got, he looks suspicious, and they've got the dog. But that's it. And the dog is not even accurate. And it actually makes you worry because one girl is getting busted with 600 caps in her. Well, what about the other 12 people that have gotten through? Because the drug dealers aren't just sending one chick in.
My problem with the drug dog operation, like you said, because that is pretty much their sole way of trying to keep drugs out of a festival.
Yep.
Let's say I was a drug dealer, and my motivation is not for anybody to have a good time. My motivation is to make money. So what am I going to do to make money? I'm going to send people into that event with drugs that don't set off sniffer dogs, like PMA, GHB, things that are lethal, dangerous, especially when mixed with other drugs like MDMA. And that's where my problem is. If that is the sole way people are trying to get out, that's my problem with sniffer dogs and the operation, is that people are just going to smuggle in stuff that they can make a huge amount of profit from and not care about the consequences of the people who take them and get it in there. That's my issue with
yeah, but like my I don't have a problem with the cops being undercover or inside trying to arrest people or bust, all that stuff they're doing inside is great. That's normal police work.
Yeah.
My issue is the getting through the actual security, the security and the police presence.
The police gauntlet.
The police gauntlet. And they literally only have one tool in their disposal, and it's not working. And if I'm a drug,
they do have undercovers lining up with people too.
Yeah, well, great.
Yeah.
So my question to you is,
but if I'm a drug dealer, and I'm just guessing here because I don't know numbers, but say I'm a drug dealer and I've got 10,000 caps. Am I going to try and put 10,000 caps on one person, or am I going to put 1,000 caps in 10 people?
Of course, 10.
10. One gets caught, still got 9 people inside. And that's what they're doing, I'm assuming, because the drugs are still getting in. And that's my problem. Like, HSU have got almost like war-type physicians and medical procedures in place. They've got people walking around, trying to spot people that are in need. They've got cool-down area. I mean, it's just absolutely next level what these guys are doing. But how are you helping HSU with what they're trying to do when the police are not really changing anything at the gate to encourage people not to try and smuggle drugs?
I have noticed they've moved their sniffer dog operation inside the event now. Like I stood at one of the gates and watched 15 people get arrested because there was a sniffer dog at the only one of two exits into the venue. And they were just walking out to have a cigarette or whatever. And then anyone who has like one pill in their pocket or they tried to turn around and walk off, and the dog wasn't even getting anyone that got arrested. They were just looking for people's reaction to the dog. That was it. But yeah, I agree.
I think the police, the heavy police presence in the dog, it doesn't work, and all it's doing is encouraging people to focus on drugs. And when you encourage people to focus on the drugs becomes the primary focus of the event.
Who's in charge of the police?
Well, that's the government, but that's the mentality of the raver needs to change as well, to make them realize, look, if you just focus on drinking instead of doing drugs, all these problems disappear.
But they like taking drugs.
That's another problem.
That's the cultural problem. You got to.
That's cultural problem, and that's the thing. Like, I remember, I'm not going to go into names, but someone said, "Look, kids are meant to make mistakes, right? They shouldn't be
forever punished for a minor mistake.
They shouldn't be forever punished, but there should be a support system there to help them if they ever get in trouble. Because once they make a mistake, they won't make the mistake again. I think that's what's missing at the moment. Is that right now, if kids make a mistake, like kids are afraid to make a mistake, so they go to the extreme, and then they get in trouble, and then unfortunately they don't get. There are some kids that
I have heard that too, where people go, "Well, if I get caught with 3, it's the same as getting caught with 40, so I'll take 40." Like,
when I say mistake, I mean like in terms of pill taking.
Yeah, well,
because kids are supposed to make mistakes. That's why they pay. That's why we pay tax dollars. Is that so? So if we ever need help, it's there. So that stays in my mind because it's very, very true. I think there is a disconnect between the police and the public. I think that's the other thing, is that they don't really understand what's going on. But I think part of that is the zero tolerance.
I think the police understand what's going on, and they're just trying to fight against it because they basically need everyone's culture to change. So the police are there to police the current situation. So whatever the current situation is, they then put the measures in place. So if the current situation is ravers are bringing drugs into the party, they then create the net over the top to try and stop that. The way that net changes isn't by us whinging to the person that's telling them to put the net there. It's by us stopping bringing drugs in.
Or at a very bare minimum, stop incidences happening that relate and involve drugs as well, like dyings and overdoses, whatever else.
So
like if that continues, then the police they're not going to go anywhere.
Mate,
the two deaths at DEFCON were due to from what has come out in the inquiry was due to MDMA poisoning coupled with overheating.
Yeah.
Right. The girl that died at FOMO, she ingested drugs because before she went into the party.
Yeah.
The guy that died after knockout was not inside the knockout grounds, but after knockout at the train station. MDMA poisoning due to overheating
and cocaine and cocaine. Yep.
Okay. So right there, I mean, you've got pretty clear. If they're looking at what can they do to what could they have done to support these kids, I'm pretty sure it's crystal clear.
Yeah, that there's a bit of attitude, like you said, some cultural adjustment there. The guy that died after HSU at the train station was offered help like twice, or his friends suggested that he should go and get help twice, and refused twice, even though clearly something was wrong, and I think he knew that as well. And I think the other guy that died at the earlier HSU event that tripped over the people's feet, he had PMA in his system as well. That was a.
But that wasn't. He didn't die because of drugs. That was due to him hitting his head, right?
Still died from drugs. Yes.
So because of drugs, he died.
Yeah.
Wow, didn't know that.
Well,
It wasn't a concussion or anything like that. It just that happened as well.
the
Probably didn't help the
five
situation.
things that the kids are doing right now is MDMA. For some reason, a lot of them are doing a cocaine now. Cocaine's a big thing.
Yep.
It's come back in a big way.
Because everyone can afford it.
So it's MDMA, cocaine, ketamine. Ketamine's huge right now. It's huge.
Nangs.
Nangs. And I think the biggest one, which I think is our next biggest issue, is GHB.
G's always been. an
G's
issue.
always been big, but I just think now it's becoming known that it's big.
It's getting really
Yeah.
big,
The sixth danger is that they're mixing all of them.
and they're mixing them. And MDMA and G are heavily affected by heat.
Yeah,
And in Australia, that's not good.
yeah. Nikki's got a point. She said, "People, the way police treat people is in searches is inexcusable.
Yep.
People who've been wrongly searched gave evidence to the inquest of how they upset they were, and some even likened it to sexual assault. What they had to go through the strip searches, especially the girls, especially if they'd been through actual sexual assault or been raped in the past. They said that was just brought it all back for them. Which
I
is
remember-
horrible to hear.
I remember at one of the parties, I was coming late, and I was supposed to come a couple of hours later, but only reason why I ended up rocking up early because I ended up getting a message from Anne-Marie, who'd just been strip searched. And if anyone knows Anne-Marie, she's pretty straighty 180. Like, she was like, when I finally got to Homebush and I got to her, she was so rattled. And this is a strong woman I'm talking about. She's pretty, like, confident woman. She's quite strong. And she was really rattled and really emotional, and it took a while to calm her down. Like, she'd spoken to other people. She's quite angry, but also quite, like, upset about what had happened. And I managed to end up getting her back in with me, and she ended up enjoying the rest of the night. But it's still like conversations we had afterwards were like always coming back, and it's just always the same. A lot of people just stop going to those events now because they
Don't want to deal with it.
how do you? I'm talking to people going, oh, it'll be all right. Don't worry. If you're innocent, you'll be sweet. If you've got nothing to hide, it's all good.
Yeah.
And then I got strip searched, and I'm like, well, I can't even say that.
Yeah, it changes your whole outlook on it, doesn't it?
Man, I don't touch anything, and I'm like, and I'm getting holy crap! Everyone is a target.
Well,
What do they say? Everybody's a suspect.
How are we a country now that everyone's guilty until proven innocent?
well, hopefully that's some things are going to change. Like I know the New South Wales Police have now had to show the inquest what their standard procedure is when it comes to drug dogs, and they couldn't produce it, and still can't.
I think the other issue is that police are telling us the wrong information.
I think
saying that we're allowed to do this when they're clearly not.
I think the police don't know, like the people on the ground police, they don't know. They don't know what the whole police force stance is, and I think this inquest is showing either does the top brass of the New South Wales police force, because they actually can't come up with a procedure on how the dogs work and all that sort of stuff.
Not just that, but even the strip searches that they're unlawful.
Unlawful.
They're unlawful.
Absolutely. We're going to cover more of that in the future Unhinged shows. Of course, the inquest is still going. And when it finishes, it's going to reconvene sometime in September. I think the coroner gathers all her findings, spends about a month or two doing that, and then they all reconvene for a week, and then she goes through what her recommendations are, which are not law, they're just recommendations that she can put forward to the government and go from there. We are going to end this show because it's like... Talking about drugs and the rave scene is never an easy topic, but it is a conversation that needs to be had. please subscribe to the channel, get involved in the program through the comments, through the chat, and through our socials. We would love your input.